Hello and welcome to Online GSM. I am so excited that you are joining right now. Now, in just a few seconds, you will see Matt Meyer deliver the last week of our It's Personal series. As we talk about that, it's always personal with a relationship with Jesus. Thank you for tuning in. At the end of his message, there will be a few questions that you can think about throughout the week to help you apply what you hear into your everyday life. Thank you for joining us. Have a fantastic time.
GSM, it is good to be here tonight. My name is Matt, and I remember about 5 or 6 years ago at GSM, there was a young man I got to know, and he was a senior. It was really the first year we got to know each other. And he was a little bit awkward, didn't have tremendous social skills, didn't have a lot of friends, and he was headed off to IU in Bloomington for college. And I remember he graduated, went to his party, and he was headed off to IU, and I was kind of worried for him a little bit. I just wanted him to make some friends. I wanted him to fit in. I wanted him to be okay there because I felt like maybe that was a place where if it just didn't work really well really early, he could get trampled. So then it was about this time of the year. It was October, November, and I had to go to Indianapolis and then St. Louis for work. So I texted him. I said, hey, I'm going to be kind of that way. I could come by way of Bloomington, and we could go have lunch. And he said, yeah, great. So we met for lunch, and I was amazed at the young man sitting in front of me. He was articulate. He was smiling. He was engaging with his eyes, and he talked more in that hour and a half over lunch than I ever heard him talk at GSM. He had made some friends, and he was doing great in school, and I was like, wow, what a remarkable change I saw in him. It was very, very cool. Maybe you know somebody in your life that you knew for a while, they were in your life, and for whatever reason, they were out of your life, and then they re-engaged, and you were like, whoa, this person's like really different. I had a buddy at work, this is a job ago, my previous job, and he was a nice enough guy, but he was kind of like really into the job, right? Like he would stay till 6:30. He was always trying to impress the boss, and he wanted to get the promotion. And when he wasn't working, he wanted to be playing golf. And I would ask about his family and kids and everything, and he would kind of give me like, oh yeah, they're fine or whatever. But he just seemed like he was like singular focused. And then this guy had a heart attack. And fortunately, it wasn't real serious, and he was back to work just 2 or 3 weeks later. But it was amazing over the next few months how his life changed and how his priorities changed and how I saw him going home at 5 o'clock. And he stopped talking about his golf game and he started talking about what his kids were up to because something had changed. Maybe you think about yourself and you think back to, 8th grade, and you think about where you're at right now tonight and you think, wow, things are considerably different than they were then. I think differently, I have different values, things are really different. So tonight's lesson, what we're talking about is this idea of change and believing that we can all change. And you guys get that, right? You guys believe we can change. In fact, Claire, you can put that first slide up. This is really what we're talking about tonight. It's a simple message. It's a simple lesson. People change, but it's really timely and it's really important. Because we believe people change, except when we don't believe that people change. Here's when we typically don't believe that people will change. When it comes to the bad stuff, when it comes to the things that are less than ideal, right? That are less than God's best. Like, for example, maybe you hear yourself say things like, my dad has got a serious temper. Like, he will never not have a bad temper. Or did you see what that kid posted? Oh my gosh, what a racist. And his dad's a racist. He's always going to be that way. Or maybe, I hear she's kind of into drugs now, and look who she's running with. There's no coming back from that road. Right? My coach is such a jerk. Oh, he makes me crazy. He's always been a jerk. He's always going to be a jerk. Right? When it comes to the bad stuff, we seem to lose our belief that there's going to be progress, growth, positive change. And here's what's interesting. That's true in the way we see ourselves as well. And the things that are not really flattering about ourselves, that's where we tend to believe that we're not gonna change. It's just always gonna be. So we'll pose it as a question like this. And Claire, we can give us the next slide. This is what it says. Do you have something that you wish you could change about yourself, but you don't think you can? Is there something about you that you wish you could change, but you don't think you can change? So let's break that down. Let's talk about that a little bit more. So maybe it's something that would be like, the first idea might be like something that's an addiction or just a bad habit or a behavioral tendency that you kind of fall to. And you find yourself kind of always going back there and you know it isn't what you want to be doing. And so you kind of feel like, oh, I think I've finally got it over this. But then when you get angry or you get anxious or you get lonely, you kind of find yourself falling back to that thing, right? And there's that little voice that says, it's always going to be that way. Or maybe it's kind of more of a situational thing, right? For you, like, I don't know, like maybe you and your trigonometry teacher kind of had a little spat the first week of school and now you've been labeled, you're just kind of that kid, right? And that's going to be trouble and you're thinking, I'm stuck in this class all year now and this is what she thinks of me. Oh, this is going to be the worst. Or you're in a situation at home in some home relationships, and these are often the case where you feel like they're making me crazy. They've always made me crazy. My brother is going to continue to make me crazy my whole life. I just know it. Right? It could be a label that you're stuck with. Maybe something as simple as you went out with some different friends and you came home like really late, like you just lost track of time and it was late and you didn't answer your mom's text and she was worried and you got home and she was hot, right? And so now, like this is like 6 months ago, and for 6 months now, every time you want to go out, especially if it's with these friends, she has to remind you, like, remember what happened that time, right? You get this label. I played ball with a young man. When I was about your age, I played baseball with a guy named Brian. Nice enough kid, good ball player. In fact, he went on to play for just a short time with the Los Angeles Dodgers. He was good ball player. But here was the deal for Brian. His dad would show up to the games drunk. And he would say things embarrassing to Brian, to everybody. And he would do things that were embarrassing and just really difficult. And I wonder if Brian ever thought, I don't think this is ever going to change. I think my lot in life is just to be kid of the drunk dad. It was tough, all right? We get these things about ourselves that they get stuck and we're ashamed of them and we're just discouraged by them and we don't know how to fix it, right? So here's the good news. I borrowed this from Johnny Kime. I didn't realize Johnny had the easy button. I think that's why Johnny's got such great hair. So here's the thing. If I said, anybody who wants to change something, you don't have to come up and talk about what it is. You don't have to say anything, but there's something about you that you don't really like and you just want it changed.
That was easy.
We're going to do that. You can just line up here at the stairs. Listen, seriously, if that was true and I had the magic easy button, every one of you would line up here at the stairs and that line would go right out the door and you would all have to get in line behind me because I got a few things that I would like to be able to go
That was easy.
and be done with because they've been plaguing me for a while, right? There are things about us that are just frustrating about ourselves. And I don't want to keep piling on the bad news, but it isn't just about the stuff inside that nobody knows because it's about the stuff that's happening with our friend group or at home or at school or in this crazy world, right? I mean, 2020 has been just bizarre. Like you guys are all sitting here looking at me in masks and you're all spread out and this is just kind of weird to me. And you're 17, give or take, and you're thinking, in 17 years, I've never seen a year quite like 2020. I'm 53. I have never seen a year quite like 2020. I mean, it's just jacked up, right? With the pandemic and everybody staying home and you guys are doing school online and I'm trying to work online and then we got the rioting and we got this crazy election and everybody hates each other and there's Twitter wars and it's just like, what is going on in the world? And it would be easiest for us to just kind of put our hands up and go, I guess this is just the way it is. And I guess this is just the way I am. And I'm going to have to kind of manage it, and I'm going to have to just deal with it because I'm just stuck here. So that's kind of the setup for our conversation about change, and I promise it'll get better. But let's pause for just a second. Let me pray for us, and then we'll get into our Bible story. Lord, thank you for the chance for us to be together, for us to look at a couple things that they're just true, Lord. They're just true, and you've got them for us, and it's really good news. And I pray that you would help us understand where our hope comes from when it comes to change. Amen. Okay, so we're going to talk about a Bible character tonight. I bet you guys can't guess who. Anybody got a guess? Zacchaeus, that is exactly right. This is the last week of It's Personal. And we are going to tackle Zacchaeus one more time. But it's good that we do because there is some cool stuff here. Okay, so let's catch up. You guys have heard about Zacchaeus now, so I don't have to start from the beginning. Think about what Zacchaeus must have been thinking. Just as Jesus is starting to come into town, the crowd's starting to gather, and he's just trying to get himself ready. He sees this tree, he's going to go climb up a tree. What are some things that might be true about Zacchaeus' life at that moment before his interaction with Jesus? He might be thinking, everybody in this town hates me. Everybody in this town thinks I'm despicable. And that isn't ever going to change, right? Zacchaeus might be, in an honest moment, might look at himself and go, I'm successful and I'm certainly rich, but I'm kind of a slime ball. And the people are right. I'm a despicable person. And you know what? I think I'm always going to be a despicable person, right? Can't you imagine what we've heard about this story for the last month of Zacchaeus, that just before he climbs that tree, can you imagine that is kind of where Zacchaeus' heart is? I think that's kind of where he's at. And yet, despite that being true, Jesus is walking down this path, and the crowd is pressing around, and everybody's excited. Everybody wants to touch Jesus. Everybody wants to get close. And Jesus stops and says, hey, Zacchaeus, what do you say we have dinner at your house tonight? Come on down. That's pretty remarkable. And so Zacchaeus comes down, and Jesus ends up at his house for dinner. And I don't think it's Jesus and Zacchaeus in the back corner of the patio having a quiet lamb dinner. I don't think that's what happens here. See, I picture Zacchaeus is like, oh no, if this guy's coming to my house, we're going to make it a spectacle, right? He's going to invite his unsavory friends, right? He's going to go find his other gutter dwellers, right? Because they kind of run in packs. And I'm picturing these guys all together at Zacchaeus' house, and Jesus shows up with his friends. Can you imagine that party? Jesus and the disciples with these tax collectors and these lowlifes, the people that nobody wants to be around. What a party that must have been. I would love to have been a fly on the wall there. And how did the townsfolk feel about that? We're going to look at our first verse in Luke 19. And the townfolk said this: all the people saw and began to mutter, he has gone to be the guest of a sinner. Mutter. I love that word. Are you prone to mutter? Are you a mutterer? I got to be honest, confession time. In 2020, I've done my fair share of muttering behind my mask. Let me give you a scenario by which I think you too would mutter, okay? Here's the scenario, okay? Let's say somebody famous in today's world, a musician, an athlete, somebody cool and famous that you like is showing up at your high school. And let's say it's Ed Sheeran, because he also is a wee little man, isn't he, right? Right, Ed, the little Ed, the redhead, okay? So Ed Sheeran, the little Ed's coming to your high school, and he shows up, and the limousine doors open. He steps out with his entourage. He pushes into the main hall of your high school, okay? Everybody's pressing around. Everybody's got their cameras out. They're trying to get selfies. There's videos going. Everybody's shouting. Everybody's excited. It is fired up in your high school because Ed's there. He's got his guitar on his back. It's like, it's cool, right? And then Ed stops, and he points up at the stairwell. See, there's this open stairwell, and there's a guy up here, a big guy sitting up there, and he's got his legs hanging over the edge of the stairwell, and it's a guy everybody calls Sparky because he's always talking about his car. But see, everybody hates Sparky, right? Because he's kind of the big bully, and he pushes people around, and he picks fights, and he drops F-bombs, and he farts in the hall and laughs about it. He's that kid, right? The teachers are afraid of Sparky, right? Nobody likes Sparky. Like, what is his deal? Just give him some space, try to survive the day without having to run into Sparky, right? But Ed goes, hey, Sparks, I'm gonna get a pizza. Let's go to your house and hang out and play video games. You know what you do? You know what you and your friends would do? You would mutter, right? Did you just see what? I didn't think I was coming to my house, but he surely didn't think he was going to Sparky's house. Mutter, 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 right? Like, he surely doesn't know who Sparky is, right? Mutter, mutter, because that just doesn't make any sense. So the people muttered because that's what was happening. It's exactly that story. The Ed story in your high school, that's what's happening in this story. Jesus is that big. He is like the rock star of the time. He has drawn crowds. People want to be close to him. They want to touch him. They want to talk to him. They want to get a question answered. They just want to hear him talk. They want to sit under his teaching. They just want to be close, and they're so excited because he's in their little town. And then Jesus goes, hey, Sparky, let's go play some video games, basically, right? He's like, Zacchaeus, yeah, everybody hates you. I get it. Isn't that kind of funny? We're going to your house. And they go and they spend the evening together. How does that impact Zacchaeus? What happens to this guy? Let's look at it. There's the next verse we will see. You've got it up there. I've got it here. Actually, I'll read it up here because I've got an incomplete version. So Zacchaeus stood up and he said to the Lord, look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor. If I've cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount. That's really cool, right? Zacchaeus, he's suddenly this big generous guy and he's giving his money back and the crowd's gotta be amazed by this. But what they're saying is it's simply an outward expression of what's really going on in Zacchaeus' heart, right? He's changed. Here's the question for us. When did that change begin in Zacchaeus? Here's what I think. I think when Jesus stopped on that path and said, hey, Zacchaeus, right then his heart opened up because Jesus, the Messiah, made it personal. He knew his name. And then that evening, I imagine Jesus speaking into Zacchaeus' life and looking past his flaws and his faults and saying, hey, I know what you could be. And let's talk about that. He helped Zacchaeus see and envision his own life in a different way. See, when someone believes you that way, when someone speaks to you that way, it changes what's inside. Have you ever been fortunate enough to have someone speak into your life and to call out your gifts and to look past what may even be obvious flaws and failures and limitations about yourself and be able to help you see what your potential is? It's like it gives you life, right? It was personal for Zacchaeus because Jesus knew his name and knew his potential. And it's personal between you and I and God the same way. So what happens next? The next verse is Jesus' response to what he sees out of Zacchaeus. Jesus says, today, salvation has come to this house because this man too is a son of Abraham, for the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. He came to seek and to save the lost. Why did Jesus come to earth? He kind of answers it there, and there's actually several good answers there, and we know that the primary reason, right, is the cross and the resurrection and salvation, and all that is true. But another reason that Jesus came to earth was that we could see what God is like. But you guys get that Jesus is God. He wasn't just from heaven and spent time with God. He's not just a relative of God. Jesus is God. So the things that we see Jesus do and the character that we see Jesus display, that's what God is and still is today. And there's some really, really good news in there for us. There's a really great lesson in there for us. And the lesson is this: we don't have to get all these things about ourselves fixed up and cleaned up and polished up in order to be okay with God, right? Zacchaeus is loved and he's accepted and he's welcomed just the way he is. Just the way he is. He has an encounter with Jesus and Jesus speaks hope and love into his life. And that is the encounter that Jesus wants you and I to have with him. All right, so Jesus says salvation's come to this house, and salvation has come because Zacchaeus has seen and had this encounter, and now Zacchaeus is believing he can be somebody that he can be proud of again. So let's go to, we can put the next slide up, and this is kind of the main point tonight. This is kind of really what you want to know, that because of Jesus, anyone can radically change. We don't know what happens next. We don't know the rest of Zacchaeus' story. We don't know if he went on to be mayor. That's kind of what I picture, something like that. Maybe we'll find out in heaven. But his life radically changed. So about 40 years later, there was a guy named Paul, who was a missionary, we talk a lot about Paul in here, right? Paul the apostle, missionary, traveled around, planted churches all over the known world. And we're going to look at a verse, you can put it up there, Claire, and this is out of 2 Corinthians. So he's writing a letter to Corinth, the church in Corinth that he planted, and he said this, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come, the old has gone, and the new is here. Right? He's talking about this change that can happen in our hearts. And here's what's cool about Paul. He didn't just hear about this idea. He didn't just hear about Zacchaeus' story maybe, and then was like translating an idea to the Corinthians. Paul lived this story too, didn't he? Because Paul was formerly Saul, the persecutor of the church, and he had an encounter with Jesus, and it changed everything, right? He had an encounter with Jesus, and it changed everything. So let's give us the next slide is kind of the part B of the main point tonight, the main lesson we're trying to communicate, and that change happens through the work of Jesus. Change happens through the work of Jesus. Because see, Zacchaeus didn't wake up and say, you know, I just finished that self-help book, and that was pretty inspiring. I think I'm going to be a nice guy today and see if I can make some friends, and I might even give a few nickels back to some folks and see if that helps. No, Zacchaeus was just going about his day, but he was fortunate enough to position himself to have an encounter with Jesus the Messiah, right? That's what made the difference. That's what made the change in his life and his heart. That's what made the difference in Saul's life and in Saul's heart when he made his change was an encounter with the living Jesus. So what does that mean for you? We wrap this up. There are really two things tonight. Again, like I said, the lesson isn't complicated, but here are the two things we want you to leave here believing. The first one is this. We want you to believe that you can change. Believe that we can all change, right? I want you to believe that change is possible because likely in a room this big, there are some of you that are sorting out some things that are really, really challenging. And they're a heavy, heavy burden. And it's even more heavy because it isn't really known maybe, or isn't known to many folks. And I want you to believe that this change is possible. And it might be an immediate kind of like amazing change in a weekend, like it was for Zacchaeus. It may be that this change happens over a period of time as we turn our feet towards Jesus and we take steps, right? We talk about taking steps around here. This is why, because we want to move to be more like Jesus. And as we move and become more like Jesus, those things inside of us that are not Christ-like, they get worked up and out, and that change happens, that transformation happens as that journey continues. So if we can change, the second thing we want you to leave tonight believing is we want you to believe that anyone can change, right? Others can change too. See, there are people that you really care about that matter to you, and there are some brokenness and some flaws there that need changed, right? That's just how it is for all of us. It's part of the human experience that we would know and see that. But if we believe that they can change, if we really believe that an encounter with Jesus could change them, see, then it changes the way that we think about them, our attitude towards them, maybe the way we pray for them. And maybe, just maybe, God's going to give you opportunity to slide up next to them and nudge them towards their encounter with Jesus, okay? I'll tell you what is actually easy. What's actually easy is for us to go, I guess it is what it is. The world's what it is. My friends are what they are. My family's messed up. It is what it is. I guess these things about me are just broken. To accept being a victim, it's somebody else's fault. To accept that I guess this is just the way it is, and I'm broken, I'm stuck. What the Christian walk is, what the spiritual journey is to get up and get our feet moving towards Jesus. And that requires action from us to get up and go. The change happens as a work of Jesus, but our responsibility is to get up and to start to move. The spiritual journey is a journey of movement. We have to be moving towards Jesus. So final thought, and we talk about this around here a lot as well, so this is just a reminder. We don't move alone. We move together, right? We move together. We believe in this idea of moving towards Jesus and taking steps together. That's why we have life groups. That's why Riley reformatted all of GSM, so we have this hour together here, and then we have an hour afterwards where we get together and we share about what's true and what's real. and where we need to go and where we need to grow. And others can come alongside you and help you take a step, and you can come along others and be that support and encouragement for them. Believe it. All right? Let me pray for you guys. Lord, thank you for the chance to us to look at Zacchaeus one more time in this story and know that you did a radical change because he encountered you and left believing that you're good and that you accepted him, loved him, and his life could be different. You saw what was possible, Lord. You know what is possible with me and with my friends here. Lord, help us to move forward together in a positive way, Lord, that we can be changed forever by the love of Jesus. Amen.